Shalom, everybody. Here we are again at Let's Get Deep Bible Study. We're getting right back into Genesis. Last week we took a pause and we talked about fasting, but now we're going to go ahead and jump back into Genesis 46. So, last time we left off with Judah and his brothers going back down to go get Jacob, and we kind of ended at 45 in verse 25. Where they told him Joseph is still alive. In fact, he's ruler of all of Egypt. But he didn't believe them because he was stunned. He was like, first of all, he thought his son was dead this whole time. So now he's getting this great news. And it said he didn't believe them at first. But then he saw the carts and he saw all the things that Joseph had sent with them to bring Israel and all of his family and his grandchildren back with him. And when he saw that, Jacob was like, okay, I'm convinced that my son Joseph is alive and I will go down and see him before I die. And so it was just like we left off on this very like lighthearted, joyful portion of the story, but we didn't get to the reunion part yet. And so now in 45, we're going to start seeing the pieces move together so they can get their reunion on the son that he thought was dead. It's very much alive. So Israel set out with all of what was his, and he reached Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the Elohim of his father Isaac. And so I paused here because if y'all don't know, we started in Genesis 1 and we've been seeing Beersheba a lot. Like Beersheba is a central point. And so the fact that all of this is going on now, and we have Israel, all of his family, they're making their way down to Egypt. And Jacob's intentional with saying, I'm going to stop here at Beersheba and offer sacrifices to the Elohim of my father Isaac. And then in this moment here, we see that as he's doing sacrifices, that Elohim speaks to Israel in a vision at night. And he's like, Jacob, Jacob. And Jacob says, here I am. And then Elohim says, I am Elohim, the Elohim of your father. He said, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes. And so I thought it was a beautiful space because every time we see Beersheba, there's this reminder of a promise that happens here. The first time that Beersheba is mentioned, I put a note on here from our Genesis 21 study to say that Beersheba has always been a place of reminder of Yahuwah's presence, even in the midst of separation and obedience. That this is a place or the well of the oath, the place or the well of a promise, which the word Beersheba literally means like well of the seven or well of the oath of the sevens, because we know seven is like this word for perfect, or the promise. And so the note I put on for Beersheba 21, the first time we see Beersheba mentioned, there was a note during the Hagar incident where I put that when bad times hit us, we often forget about the promises that Yahuwah has declared to us. And it taints our view, and it makes us see things as a bad situation. We lose hope and belief in the one who provides when circumstances don't really look hospitable. And here in this situation, the first time Beersheba is mentioned, we see that Hagar, like many of us, can forget the promise that her son is going to be a great nation, and you jump straight to he's dead or he's dying. But it is only when Yahuwah opens her eyes or our eyes or Jacob's eyes that you can see that the provision was always there for her, or the provision has always been there for us. Because when Yahuwah declares a promise, the provision is guaranteed. And I thought this was a beautiful full circle moment, because even in this point here where he's stopping at Beersheba, the place where all this stuff has happened with something that Isaac is not, he's probably aware of it because they probably told the story of Abraham walking with Yahuwah. But the fact that Beersheba was a place where Hagar met Yah, where Abraham met Yah, where Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob, this is a place where Yah is like, a promise was made. This place, this well is going to be a reminder or altar or a memorial of the promises that I have made to you. And so I thought it was a beautiful full circle moment of us stopping at Beersheba. And Yah is again reiterating his promise, his oath, his provision to what he told Abraham, where he's now reiterating it to Jacob at the same spot. Okay, verse 5. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and Israel's sons and their father Jacob and their children and their wives, and in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to transport him. So Jacob and all his offspring went to Egypt, taking with them their livestock and their possessions that they had acquired in Canaan. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons and his daughters and his granddaughters, all his offspring. So I'm going to pause here because after this part here, it's just the numbering of all of the children of Israel. And so I'm going to pick back up at verse 27, where it says, with the two sons that had been born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family, which went to Egypt, were 70 in all. And so we're just seeing like, okay, they started off with just Abraham and Isaac, and now we have 70 people. 70 souls are now going down into Egypt that are part of the house of Israel. And then I wanted to pause here because it made me think about Taryn. We were talking about like, okay, Judah, like the rest of the brothers, what are y'all doing? Where's the leadership role? And I thought it was beautiful that we're starting to notice like more leadership or more trust is being given to Judah. Like there's this gradual restoration in Judah that's happening, even in the story, which like, if we hadn't mentioned it before, we might have kind of glossed over it. But even in this, we're seeing in verse 28, it says, now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to get direction to Goshen. And we might have brushed over that before, but seeing that now, for me, I thought that was a big deal because even at the top of 46, it talked about how Jacob and Judah are having this conversation. And at first, Jacob doesn't believe Judah that Joseph is alive. He had to see the carts, and he's like, okay, I believe his word. Okay, he brought back, my sons. Okay, now I'm going to send him ahead of us to go get directions from Joseph to take us to Goshen. It's just like there's this gradual restoration in Jacob's trust in Judah.
So is that at the point of like where Judah took the initiative for it, and then Jacob kind of relinquished, like started to relinquish control? Like, is that the restoration part of it? Like, like once somebody showed that like, hey, I can help, or I'm trying to explain and do some extra covering as well, then Jacob can say, okay, yes, that's okay. I'll start to let you guys do a little bit of a different role as far as the leadership.
Yeah, I think it really started when Judah kind of stepped up and said, hey, we can't go back down to Egypt without Benjamin. If he doesn't come back, it's on me. Like, I'm taking full responsibility. And from that moment there, Jacob was observing, witnessing how Judah moved throughout the entirety of this situation. Even him coming back with not just Benjamin, but with a surplus of carts and chariots to bring the whole family down there, and with the report that Joseph is still alive. It was like, I'm just imagining in my sanctified imagination that Jacob he was able to heal and to then be able to give some of that restoration and that trust back to Judah, because he's also seeing a change in Judah since the meeting of Joseph, when that whole not revelation, but revelation of who Joseph was happened with Judah and all the rest of his brothers. A change had happened within all of them, right? But Judah being the firstborn and Judah being the one that concocted the whole plan, it's literally a whole entire 180 that we're seeing in the character of Judah. And I'm betting that it can be seen on his countenance when he returns to his father Jacob. And again, that's just my sanctified imagination, but we're watching this transition of their character and their development and their healing and their confessions of sins and all the things that we say that happens when you go into the throne room of our king, where you have to, be honest with yourself. Like they've walked through that. And now they're seeing their father again after all of this revelation and deep grieving and healing has happened. And I mean, you can't look different after something like that. Like we know it in our own lives, but looking at it here, with this, I guess we call it character development, but with this spiritual transformation that's happening, even with like little sentences showing that Judah's going ahead or Judah's having the conversation with his dad, and it's just like he's not taking it, but he's actually walking in the leadership that was already his, if that makes sense.
Well, his heart is they made peace. So
Yeah.
finally, the secret that's been eating up everybody for all these years, especially when it comes to hiding it from Jacob, because that hurt him the most. But it's the pieces coming back together. And then Joseph did tell him, like, don't weep because, it was meant for me to be sent away to be here to help prepare a place and to be able to take care of the family. So he's kind of given that spiritual piece of it as well, and that's being the youngest kid, like he's more wise than the rest of them. So I think that probably helped build Judah up to get the strength. He's like, focus on the forward. Like if I forgave you or if I made peace, then I just want my family. So now too, he's able to give that back to dad because they know how much it grieved their father all those years. I do think you could see that on his countenance in his, I mean, I don't know, when you stop being mad at people, your whole, a lot of things can change.
Hallelujah, definitely. I just want to pull that out because a lot of times when we read over this accounting of history, I don't know, that just kind of stood out to me, like seeing that, Judah did this and Judah went ahead and Judah got the directions. And I was just like, okay, I see you, Judah. Like, you've changed, even in these small verses, like that's something that I noticed. Um, okay, so verse 28. Oh, 29. Joseph had his chariots made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and they wept for a long time. And Israel said to Joseph, now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive. And so again, the last time there was weeping and there was a deep grieving, or not even, it was like I won't call it grieving. There was a deep weeping and a joy that happened even when Benjamin and Joseph met for the first time. And so you can imagine the son he has not seen. And what is it? This has been over 20 some years, probably like over 17. He was 17 when down there. He was 30 when he got in. He was in charge. And then a couple of years of the famine happened. So I'm thinking at least 20 years, So you can just imagine, right? Like finally you're hearing that your son's alive. You're on this journey. There's this anticipation. I don't know how long the journey is, but you can just imagine Jacob just sitting there like, my son's alive. He done brought his stuff. Like, I believe it, but like, I want to touch him, like I can't wait to embrace him again. And so it's just a lot. It's just I've never been in a situation like that. So I can't imagine the amount of reconciliation and reunion that was going on, like in the hearts and the minds and the healing that happened when they were finally able to embrace each other. Okay, 31. Oh, 30. Sorry. Thank you, Mama. Israel said to Joseph, oh, now I'm ready to die. I'm still for myself the year so alive. 31. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up to speak to Pharaoh and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who are living in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds. They tend livestock and have brought along their flocks and herds and everything they own. When Pharaoh calls you in, and ask, "What is your occupation?" You should answer, "Your servants have tended livestock from our boyhood on, just as our fathers did." Then you will be allowed to settle in the region of Goshen, for all shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians. Um, and so I just thought that was interesting. And so I put on here for verse for just like this whole conversation and going into 47, it's like the reaccounting of like asking them where they come from, that they're going to the land of Goshen, and it's Pharaoh literally asking their occupation, and they tell them that we're shepherds, just as our fathers and our fathers' fathers have been. And they're saying in verse 4, we have come to live here for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan, and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now, please let your servants settle in Goshen. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best parts of the land. Let them live in Goshen. And if you know any men among them with special abilities, put them in charge of my own livestock." And so I want to pause here because I put on here like this is a nation of shepherds, which one that's kind of prophetic already as it is. Like nation, like Yah has called us to be a nation of priests. The priest's role is to be able to teach, to lead, to guide, to help heal the people. And so here we are, literally a nation of shepherds at the beginning, and them identifying themselves as shepherds um, was like giving assurance that they did not come to like take over Egypt. They weren't trying to get involved in politics. Sheeps and goats were not really seen. They were kind of seen as like lowly pastures, which is why they're saying the Egyptians detested like shepherds, because in the Egyptians, like in their, deification of things, they really revered like rams and cows, but not so much goats and sheep. So when they saw that, okay, look at these shepherds, all they got is these goats and these sheep, it was kind of like oh, these people are like kind of like below us. Let them have that land. Let them tend to the sheep and the goats and all the pastures and all that things like that. Like we don't. That's very common in their eyes, which I thought was interesting.
I'm glad you brought that out because I was like, why did he have to make it a point to tell them that they were shepherds? I know he wanted the separation. I know, they wanted, to be in Goshen. They didn't necessarily want to be right there with the Egyptians. But I'm like, if that was their livelihood, why did he have to tell them to say that? And so I'm glad you brought that point out about to make that distinction of how they saw that, because I was wondering about that. I'm like, okay, if this is what you did, he's not telling them to come in there and lie, but why did you have to specifically say that? I was wondering why he did that. So thanks for bringing that out.
Well, so since I was thinking of it from a point of, if it's sheep and goats, that like the number would be a lot. It takes a lot of work to do that, so they have to not be threatened. If you're thinking about like maybe the a ram can be aggressive, possibly, bulls, like bigger animals, that type of thing. But on a level of it's like for them to be royalty, they don't want anything to threaten their authority or something that could be seen that like, oh, maybe if you got these type of animals, then affluent people would be in your circles and stuff too. So who wants to deal with sheep? Who wants to deal with, the lower type of, it just seems like they were content with that at that, those things in per se versus trying to get more affluent type, or more expensive things of, so he knew what type of like things that would interest them that they thought were high or mighty or big. So he's saying just like come in and, but it goes back to something you said a few weeks back. Again, he had to learn their language, their culture, so he knows the things that's like the bright, shiny object, right? And he's like, hey, get them over here because this just gets y'all out the way so they don't. I still keep thinking it's about being threatened, like even though it's your people and your favorite, I still don't want them coming in taking over, super big, being at the same spaces as us. So if you
So
just
kind
worried
of like
about your
out of
sheep and
sight, out of
goats,
mind.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean the smaller things, that take a lot of work versus, some bigger animals that's gonna dominate, take over more territory or something like that.
Yeah, in the culture and context Bible, it literally says like in Egyptian culture, the shepherds were detested because of their association with foreigners, and it was seen as low status in society. Also, with sheep and goat were inferior animals, and so because they thought it threatened farmland, and also because all the other animals within the deification of Egyptian gods and goddesses and whatnot, um, they revered like cows and bulls, and rams. But so they didn't have any gods that were sheep. They didn't have any gods that were goat like or pasture grazers. So for them, again, if they raised bulls, it would be something different. Like, you know, in their spiritual twisted mind, they'd be like, wow, this is a nation that like herds bulls, like they have favor with the gods, like it would be seen like that. But that's not the case with Israel. They're a nation of shepherds, like, you know, humble, meek in a sense of things like that. But the Egyptians are looking at it like we don't want nothing to do with that. Like that's dirty, that's beneath us, kind of a thing. So all those things come into play. So the culture, the context, what they deemed as a holy animal or something that the gods had influence with, all those things matter. And Joseph knows that. Like it's not like he was going on there spilling a story. Like they are shepherds, they do shepherd flocks. But he was telling them, I need you to really reiterate this: that you, your daddy, your granddaddy, your great granddaddy, your whole occupation is sheeps and goats. That's what you care about. That's what y'all do. You don't have no interest in nothing else. Okay, what was that? 47. Okay. So that kind of goes, that's like what all 47, 1 through 11 is about. And we also see here that when they're in the midst, like Jacob comes and he blesses Pharaoh, you know, which is again that hierarchical order in the spiritual. I'm like, yes, I'm coming, you know, into the throne of a king. You would think that they would be expecting to get like a blessing or a favor from Pharaoh, but really it's the opposite, where Jacob blesses Pharaoh. And that's at verse 10. Oh, this is verse 7. Oh yeah, so Joseph brought his father and presented him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asked him, how old are you? So at this point, Jacob is 130. And he says, my years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. And that's like the last time we see Jacob and Pharaoh interact. It's just this one time you meet me, you know, my son, you're meeting me, telling you how old I am, telling you that I've been a stranger in the land and roaming the earth. I'm a pilgrim, basically. He blesses them and he going about his business. Very non-confrontational, very say hi, let's go. Let's get our stuff, let's go. Very straight to the point. And yeah, and then also they're provided for. You know, on verse 12, it says, Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all of his father's household with food according to the number of their children. So even though there's a famine going on, you can't tell there's a famine going on in Goshen. You can't tell that there's a famine going on in the house of Israel. And which is going to bring us to our next point, where I put on here the covered versus, the uncovered versus the covered. Like those who are in the house, those who are in Goshen, those who are in the tabernacle. And this is where we start getting to more like today, here and now, how we move, how we're supposed to be, versus those who are not in the house, those who are uncovered, those who are still amongst, who are in the world, still trying to live and thrive in Egypt, versus those who are like, I'm gonna be separated, I'm gonna be off in Goshen. And this is the thing that I didn't release. This is what when I was reading it, I did not read this with a preconceived notion. I was reading it and y'all put the notion in my mind that this is important for now. And so on verse 13, we're seeing, I'm just going to read it because there's a lot that goes on here, and I want to read this before I get into like the covered versus the uncovered. So 13, there was no food. However, in the whole region, because of the famine was severe, both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain that they were buying, and he bought it into Pharaoh's palace. When the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, give us food. Why should we die before our eyes? Our money is all gone. And then Joseph said, bring your livestock. I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock, since your money is gone. So they brought him the livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, sheep, goat, their cattle, and donkeys. And he brought them that year with food in exchange for their livestock. When that year was over, they came to him the following year and said, we cannot hide from our Lord the fact that since our money is gone and our livestock belongs to you, there is nothing left for our Lord except our bodies and our land. Why should we perish before your eyes, we and our land as well? Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we with our land will be in bondage to Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. The Egyptians, one and all, sold their fields because of the famine was too severe for them. The land became Pharaoh's, and Joseph reduced the people to servitude from one end to Egypt to the other. However, he did not buy the land of the priests because they received regular allotment from Pharaoh and had enough food from the allotment Pharaoh gave them. That is why they did not sell their land. Okay, so I know you're like, okay, story about Joseph, story about them, being desperate and like they ran out of money. So now they're selling their livestock. They ran out of livestock and now they're selling their land. They ran out of land and now they're selling themselves. And when I was reading this, y'all was just like, so was the end times. As is here now, so will be the end times. And I want us to focus on this because the uncovered are quick to sell their soul. The soul is the flesh, the tangible things, the property, in order to continue eating, even though it means that you are agreeing to put yourself in bondage to Pharaoh. The uncover's main goal is to not physically perish. So they're saying, buy us, buy our land. And there's this shift that happens in the space of Egypt. There's a shift that's happening in our world where there's a shift from privately owned property to centralized ownership of property, a state-run economy. And so when y'all was showing me this, I was like, okay, I'm reading the story about Joseph and Pharaoh in Egypt, but y'all was like, no, this is a word of warning to be aware of what shifts are gonna be like in our time, in our children's time, in your grandchildren's time, to where there's a shift that is happening that is maybe sort of kind of seen to those who are involved in politics, but for most of us, it's not really seen. We don't really pay attention unless the Holy Spirit makes us aware. And so there is a shift that is happening, that is going to happen, where the people will become desperate. Well, they will be so willing and ready to sell this, to sell that, just so they can eat. And it made me think of like immediately Revelations, where no man can buy or sell unless they have the mark. And it's not going to be this obvious thing like get the mark. It's going to be gradual, like it was here with Joseph, with Pharaoh, with the people saying, we ran out of money. Okay, well, what you got next? Okay, we got this, we got that. Okay, well, we ran out of that. What you got next? It happened in stages to where they sold themselves into bondage to Pharaoh. And so we can't keep looking for this, oh, you got to get a chip if you want to use your credit card at the store. It's not going to be that simple. It's going to play on the desperation of a people. Even in this culture and context, Bible said that the people were grateful for their lives. And that's how the government is going to sell it. It's going to be like, you should be grateful that we are allowing you to still buy, sell, and eat because you don't have anything else to sell for us. You don't have anything else you can do for us. It's going to be in the sense of desperation. And this is for the uncovered, those who are not in the house, those who are still living and thriving in Egypt and in Canaan. This ain't got nothing to do with Goshen. Goshen is not mentioned here. This is all of the Egyptians. These are all the people who had possessions and land and cattle and riches and all of these grand things, and they are selling it all out for some grain so they won't perish. And then it says, and in Matthew 16, what does it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Like, what will you give in exchange to save your life, to literally so you will not perish? And so the word bondage, I want to break that word bondage or servant down, and it broke down to desire or to pull or to harvest is the first word. for the house, for the dwelling place of the most important man. So basically, in this sense, they are literally going to be working. Their desire is to be in the house of the most important man, which in this phase is Egypt. You are literally selling, your desire is to be in the house of the enemy, or to be in the house of the one who controls your food. But for us, we're in bondage, we're in servitude to our high priest, our king. Our desire is to be in the house of the most high Yah. So our desire is not going to look like the desires of the world to be able to live, function, and move in the enemy's house and dwelling places. Our desire, our pool, we want our harvest to be in the house of our Father, to be in the house of the cover place of Goshen. And I was not expecting to talk about end time things. I was not expecting to talk about what it's going to look like when there's a shift in the economy, when there's a shift to centralized ownership of a one nation or a one state type of thing, where they control all the money, all the interest, and you have to do whatever they say in order to get what you want. It's not going to happen in the blink of an eye. It's going to happen in stages. And we, as children who are in the house, who are in Goshen, not to be afraid of it, but to be aware that as Egypt is running around, as Babylon is running around with their heads cut off, trying to figure out how they're still gonna be able to live comfortably the way that they've been living comfortably, that they are slowly allowing certain freedoms to be snatched away. And I'm not a political person at all. I'm not on the thread of what's going on.
I don't think it's political. I think this is a very right now topic.
Oh, it's definitely right now.
Yeah, it's definitely, because I mean, what I pulled out of it is that not that Joseph tried to finesse them by any way, but they were expecting somebody to bail them out of their problem. So I'm just thinking, if you own property and you own cattle and you own that, you didn't go and say, hey, can I make a deal to sell my stuff at whatever price? You're just they went to him complaining, like, we can't eat. But you wasn't thinking for yourself. So, I mean, in the politics aspect, we're sitting here and we're watching all these announcements and all the stuff and whatever else the case is. But we're educated, we're well able, we're covered, we have all these tools or whatever. And to not put those things in place, I see the end time type of thing. We talk about that with our kids, and I have grown kids, but just like explaining them that you got to be able to take care of yourself, and you have all the tools. So you can't say somebody mistreating you out in the street when you're well equipped, in this particular situation. So the first year they go, and then here's a thing, but where are the people that were supposed to be planning themselves? They wasn't planning. They just kept going to somebody. You're right, selling yourself off. So you're not making a stand. You're not coming up with something that, I mean, they might could have changed that situation a little bit, but in reality, they lost everything just to get the quick answer. So yes, Joseph and them, they saved them year by year, but that stuff that, when you talk about the end times, who's working? And then it circles back to, for me, I think the analogy is the shepherds, the servitude, going back to, they were able to survive because they knew how to take care of the land. They knew how to care for things. They knew how to grow things, to birth things, to do that. So I think about that along the lines of, like, my couple oldest kids, they think it's one way, one profession, one way. And as soon as it don't go right, then they don't know how to adjust, adapt, bend. And we didn't see that with our parents and stuff, like other generations, grandparents and things like that. They adjusted well. I mean, you shift according to how to survive, but you just can't sit back and not try to survive. I think it's very end time.
I think when you mentioned the shifting part, that's the thing that stood out to me, because Israel is known for being nomadic, for moving around, for making it shake, to making it work where it is. And the main thing here, like Paris said, their spiritual guidance, their Elohim, their covering was Yah. Everybody else, their faith, their system was built on falsehood, was built on lies, was built on demons and devils and falsehoods. And so, like, yes, a lot of this is very tangible and very political, but at the end of the day, it's all spiritual. even if you don't have land, even if you don't have the provision to be able to grow your own food or have a homestead or things of that nature, your Goshen is where Yah is. Your tabernacle, we are the tabernacle of Yah. So if he's indwelling within us, that's our firm foundation. Even if I'm looking at my cupboard and I don't see no food, I believe him for it. I'm not going to go and sell. I'm not going to go and sell myself to the government or to my state representative to say like, okay, well, I'll do this because now I'm down on my last luck. There's a lack of faith. There's a lack of belief when we run to a system who we know does not serve our fear, Yah, because that's what the Egyptians did. One, because they still have the same belief system as Pharaoh. Again, and I thought it was interesting too that the priests, the false priests, they didn't have to sell there. So there's this thing going on in the government of Egypt where the government has all the power and the spiritual system of Egypt also has all the power. They don't have to be sold because they're working in cahoots, which is the beast system, where it's going to be a conglomerate where, you know, the beast system is in place, but also the spiritual system of the Antichrist and the beast system are all one and the same. Just here, when we're looking at Pharaoh and Egypt, where all of Egypt is now a centralized powerhouse where they have everything, but the priests were untouched because it's the spiritual system in which the bondage is happening. Go ahead, Dominique.
And so this is wild that we even ended up here in this conversation, because this goes back to the testimony I shared a couple weeks ago with us in regards to the situation that I was put in. And so that's why I feel like everything happens in his perfect timing. And the Most High, he does things so that we can testify for one another, so that we can encourage each other to stay strong in our faith, because this is exactly what transpired with me in today, 2025. You see what I'm saying? So, and even down to the land being sold, and they were trying to, you know, I was literally at my last and put up in a position that I felt like, you know, if, you know, what was my option? But the Most High provided. And I had the faith to sustain myself that bully, talk about bully, all to the highest level. When it comes down to your children and it's between the livelihood of you and your children, what he's trying to see from us right now is the test is so real. He's testing us to see what is it that we're willing to do and bend in circumstances when our back is up against the wall. And so we have to show ourselves to be completely sold out for him and operate in a spirit of complete faith without even knowing where we're going to go. We've gotten so accustomed, and they've trained us very well on trying to come up with 5-year goal, 10-year goals, the plan for next week, the plan for tomorrow. I see my life being here by the age of 30, 45. By 55, I'm going to be retiring at this age. Scratch all that stuff out. Scratch it out, because tomorrow's not even promised. He wants us to worry about today. Okay? That's it. Nothing else. So all that extra stuff that we got going on, we got to leave that alone. And that is exactly what he for me, how he had this play out was exactly like Joseph. I'm talking about verse by verse. And I'm just here to share that testimony with you all, because it's going to happen to you too soon. Or if it hasn't already, you're going to be tested and put in that position. Like she said, you're going to open the cabinet. You're like, wait, man, I ain't got nothing to eat. All right, Father, what are we going to do? That's the response. What are we going to do, Father? Abba, I know that you're my provider. Abba, I know that I'm dependent on you. So what are we going to do? So
that's exactly, yes, sis Dominique. The way that Yah has allowed you to literally walk that out in real time, and us going over this now, even though we've already heard your testimony, but it literally, it's when your back is up against the wall, like that is, it says, so, pressure reveals diamonds, and pressure reveals olive oil, and darkness reveals if the grape juice is going to turn into wine. All these things happen in these pressure-filled dark places where the tension happens to see what you're really made of. And I just think that this is a very important word. I'm gonna tell you, it blew my mind reading this today. I was just like, okay, y'all, like this is a word that we need now, currently, as some of y'all are celebrating New Year's now. Happy New Year for those of us who are still, anticipating for the new year, and those who have already celebrated Passover, about to celebrate Passover. We are in the new year, okay? And so this is a word, a reminder for us to know that we are to be in the house. And if you're not already in the house, how to move once you see Egypt or Babylon shifting to try to get you to sell everything, because you don't want to surrender to Yah's system, but you still want to be in Babylon or Egypt's system. And so we have to choose who we're going to be in service to. Who are we going to be in bondage to? Am I going to be am I bound to the covenant, or am I in bondage to a fallen system? Because either way, you're going to have to be in bondage to something. You're going to be bound to something. You're either going to be a servant laboring and worshiping the Most High Yah, or you're going to be a servant in worshiping and in labor to an antichrist, to a fallen system, to falsehood. There's only two options, but you got to be bound to something. So if you're bound in Yah, you are secure. And I thought that was amazing to see that the word bondage or service literally also means to worship. And so like, oh, I'm not worshiping the enemy. Yeah, but you're in service to a system that serves the enemy's agenda. So therefore you are worshiping it. Our work, our labor is worship to Yah. And so that's why, so in Revelations, it talks about the mark being in your hand or in your forehead. What you do with your hands, how you move, how you labor, how you serve, how you get money, how all these things are a type of worship. Is the things that you do with your hands, do they honor Yah, or do they honor the world system? It's in your hand. How you think, in your mind, the marking of your mind, is it on what Yah has called you to do? Is it on Yah's kingdom? Is it on Yah's things? Is it on his will, his purpose? Or is your mind's eye focused on the enemy's things, on the enemy systems, on falsehood? Everybody's looking for a physical stamping of the hand or a physical stamping of the forehead. But what is your mind on, and what are your hands doing? Because the word bondage and service literally means to labor, to work for, to worship, to serve. What are you doing? What are you thinking? I'm not saying that it's not actually going to be something on your hand, but if you're still looking for something tangible, but you're already operating in a system that goes against everything God's telling you to do, you're already operating in the system of the Antichrist. And I think that's something that we kind of brush over, where Yah says, come out of her, my people, because he's telling us, you're already in that system. I'm calling you out of her system because you've already been in it. For the majority of our lives, we've already been operating in a system that is anti-Yah, that is in opposition to what Yah has called us to. So when he's saying, come out of her, my people, he's saying, take off the mind, take off the work of this other fallen kingdom and put on my mind, put on my righteousness. It's a calling out. Everybody's thinking that you're waiting to get a stamp of the Antichrist or get a stamp in your forehead, when he's calling us out of a system into his house.
And also, too, to add to that, sis, the stress goes away. Listen to me. I'm telling you, when we put our trust in him, the things that we are concerned about are no longer our concerns. And so all of these high blood pressure that we got going on, everybody claiming anxiety, everybody's claiming depression, high levels of stress from all kind of stuff. I guarantee you, the moment that you just full on trust and believe and just understand the fact that you can't control anything but what it is that's within your perimeter. I mean, because faith without works is dead. So we understand that we have to do the work. We're working with him, okay? But we're not controlling it. And so when you relinquish that control and you say, okay, Father, I'm going to do what I can do in my means, okay? Anything outside of this, it's all on you. And I'm not even gonna worry about it. Meaning that's the scripture says we're not supposed to worry about tomorrow at all. And the moment that you don't worry about tomorrow, where it's gonna come from, how you gonna get it, what's gonna happen with their, even with our children, because that's a big one for mothers out here. We are so wrapped up in and we can get wrapped up in our children and their life and trying to control the outcome of their life. They belong to him. So you can go ahead and let them go too. So, and that's just a part of a lot of what's happening that I'm noticing um, with us as women, that's really that the enemy is working hard on trying to destroy us and take us out with illnesses based off of our circumstances. And if we just let those circumstances go, and like she says, go back to your daddy house so he can take care of you, then that's it right there.
Yes,
That was good, Dominique. I can testify to that as well, because when I was so concerned about my son when we were going through a bit ago with him with school and all these different things, and I'm like, he was acting totally out of character, and he had called me one day. We talked about some stuff, and he had made some decisions without talking to my husband and I. And I was just so worked up, and I was just like, I shared this with you guys before, oh, I'm gonna pray, I'm gonna fast, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and I was praying, and my intention was to fast until my husband got home, and we talk about it and come up with a game plan and everything. And I was just crying out to y'all, and I was just crying out and crying out and crying out and crying out. And he was like, basically, eat and wash your face. That's what he told me. I have that written in my prayer journal. Eat and wash your face. And I was just crying, and the tears was just coming down and everything. He was like, I love, Avery, but I also love you. And he was like, you have to take care of you, and I'll take care of Avery. And I was like, whoa. And that word, once I got that word from Abba, because it was so much back and forth over months, and, just so much stuff came out that my husband and I weren't even aware of, what he was feeling and thinking and all this kind of stuff. Till I was just praying and 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 praying. And he was like, you are my daughter, you are my child just as well as Avery. And when I got it, it was like no one else could tell me anything. I was talking to Taryn one day, and she was like, well, sis, we as moms. And I was like, no, sis, Abba told me blah 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 blah. I'm not doing anything else. I'm done. I'm taking my hand off. It's settled. It was so settled in me. I've never, I think I was sharing with Samaria.
Hallelujah.
I've never had shalom about a situation like that ever before in my life, to where I was like, okay, however it happens, I don't know how he's going to do it, but he told me he was going to do it, and I'm taking my hand off of it. I'm done with it. I knew what he had told me, and it was like a weight, a burden had just lifted off of me, because I was just so worked up about this, because I was like, this is so out of character for my child. I don't understand, y'all. What is, and I was like, okay, y'all, I'm gonna seek you. I'm gonna da, da, da. He was like, nope, I got it. It's done. It's over with. I got it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It's that weight that comes right off of you. And that's how I know it's something, when it's heavy on us like that, and we look at our body as a temple and how he created us. He created us so strategically that weight, it weighs on our organs, our heart, it goes through our blood, all these. And we spoke about that. What was it, last week no, 2 weeks ago, in regards to illnesses and just how those things can be brought about by certain things that we have to release and get rid of. And so that's just my That's my testimony to any of you that are struggling with that. Um, just let it go. The sooner you let it go, then the faster he's able to heal you, give you the peace that you're praying for. But what we can't do is we can't say, Father, I'm praying and asking that you give me peace. Father, I want you to make me whole again and heal my, the areas of my life. But then we're still kind of holding on to certain things. So we got to let them things go.
Hallelujah. I also wanted to read I didn't read the whole of that Matthew 16, because I think it starts off like a man who tries to save his life will lose it, but a man who loses his life for my sake will find it. Right. And so and then it goes into the portion about, for what is it profit a man that he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul. And so I wanted to make sure I can read that whole part, because the first part of that is how Yah is calling us to literally, like, are you willing to lose everything in this system? Are you willing to lose everything that you think you're supposed to have in order to run after me? Which is why Yahusha also says, like, a man who is not willing to let go of mother, brother, husband, wife, child is not worthy of my kingdom. That's just like, those are some really heavy words. But when we sit down, when we pray, and Yah's like, let this go, I got it. It's like Yah saying, can you relinquish control? Can you relinquish ownership of your child, of your spouse, of your family, of your friends for me? Because in you letting that go, in you saying, whatever happens to my family and friends, it don't matter, because I trust my good Father. I trust the Heavenly Father that He is a good Elohim. He is a righteous judge. He got them. So all I need to do is worry about running after you, because you're gonna care for everything else. But if I can't let them go, if I feel like I have to be the one that dictate everything and how my mother gets her salvation, how my dad or how my brother, how my friends are getting there, y'all's like, your focus is not on me. Will you let them go for me? And something like, if you read that without that understanding of who Yah is, it can kind of sound like, oh, he's mean. You want me to let go of my husband? You let me go of my wife, my kids to follow you? That's crazy. It's like, actually, it's you saying that you trust and you know that I'm the one that got him anyway. And so I had to change my perspective when I first read that some years ago. I was like, so you saying, like, I gotta hate my mother, my brother, my family, my friends to love you? It was just like, it's not hate in the sense of like that, but it's like you love me so much that, like, you'll put them down to seek me. You'll put them down to have all of me. And that's a level of devotion that we are all learning and growing and walking in, so yeah. Yeah, so when y'all have some time, definitely go over Genesis 47 and read that gradual progression from 47 verse 13 all the way to 23. Actually, even further down, it says that, the priests didn't sell their allotment at 23. Joseph said to the people, now that I have bought you in your land today for Pharaoh, here is your seed that you can plant the ground. But when the crops come, give a fifth of it to Pharaoh. The other 4/5 you may keep as seed for your fields and as food for yourselves, your household, and your children. And they said, you have saved our lives. May we find favor in the eyes of our Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh. So Joseph established it as law concerning the land of Egypt, still in force today, that a fifth of the produce belonged to Pharaoh. It was the land of the priests that did not become Pharaoh's. And I just want to stop there because, it's just a gradual process. Joseph is not the bad guy in this situation. He works for the state. So in this sense, we're not looking at Joseph as like as a Mashiach figure for this breaking down, for this study per se, because in this, Yah brought it to my attention for me to see it, how it will look in our time, like how political shifts are happening currently and that are going to happen, and what workers of the state or workers of the government would look like, and how their language would be on saying, well, just do this and just do that. Hey, it's a pretty good deal. we own your land. All you have to do is give us 1/5 of this, and you're good to do whatever you want with the rest of it. It's not gonna sound like none of this sounds actually too bad when you consider the fact that they're in a famine, they're in dire straits, right? Like Dominique was saying earlier, like your back is pushed up against the wall. This kind of sounds like a good deal, right? But on the spiritual side, looking in, this ain't got nothing to do with us, okay? Because we're Israel. This ain't got nothing to do with us. This is what's going on in Egypt. This is what's going on in Babylon. But over here on the side of Goshen, jumping up to verse 27 says, now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. And while all that was going on, while they were selling themselves, they acquired property. They were fruitful and increased in great number. The complete opposite. They acquiring land. They acquiring property. They not sitting around figuring out how they can sell themselves to Pharaoh. No, they're not.
And you know something, sis? This is not even being taught. This is so sad. This is a one-sided story in this generation right now. They're not even teaching this to people about what was going on with Israel. And that's why it's so important for us to understand, like, his covering is so real. I can't even explain to you how real his covering is. It's so real, it make you want, look, I'm in the house now, okay? Out of 6 kids, I only got 1 with me right now. That's Dominic, okay? And I'm babysitting somebody else's child. But even if I sat here today and I was like, Father, that's out. Even if I had no kids with me right now, my behind will be in the house. Because your covering is so real. But it was just like the spiritual aspect of your covering and being in the house, you know? It's that protection that he has and the provision that he's given us in our obedience is like no other. So it makes you just want to stay so close to him that, like how a child be wanting to breathe your, like moms, you know, when your child wants to get so close to you, they feel like they're trying to take your oxygen. Like that's how we need to be with Yah. Like it has to be that close up on him. And so that's why what you just said, it just triggered that part about being in the house for me.
And I know we're not there yet, but we probably will closer to where I know me personally, I'll be celebrating Passover April 12th. But by the time we get over there, we'll probably be close to Exodus. We'll be in the story of Exodus. I don't know if we'll be in the part where the plagues are happening, but we definitely, by the next week and a half, we gonna be in Exodus. Okay. And so, you know, Yah's willing, we'll be over there talking about it. But even in the story of the Exodus, the reaccounting of our history, it talks about how all the plagues was going on in Egypt. It wasn't happening in Goshen. Same, different, same story, you know, different levels of, you know, punishment, but like Egypt was going through it. Okay, it was gnats, it was frogs, it was locusts, it was boils and all this stuff was going on. It didn't touch Goshen. Are you in Goshen? Are you in the tabernacle? Are you in your father's house? Are you still playing around out there in the Babylonian streets? So I was just seeing that contrast, reading, you know, 47 and saying how, oh, now the Israelites, and they was acquiring property and they were fruitful and increased greatly in number. And then it's just like, okay, all this drama is happening in Egypt, but now let's get back to the main focus of the story. What's going on in Israel? What's going on with Israel? Okay, verse 28. Now Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh and promise that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried. And then Joseph said, I will do as you say. And swear to me, said Israel, And Joseph swore to him, and Israel worshiped as he leaned on the top of his staff. Babylonian streets. Yeah, literally, Babylonian streets. Sorry, I was reading chat. They had me cracking up. And so all this is going on, right? The Israelites are not concerned. Okay, Jacob's house is not concerned. They're concerned about what's going to happen to our daddy when he died. He said, I don't want to be here in Egypt. My bones will not be in this place. Take me up out of here. You got to promise me. And so the fact, a lot of people ask, like, why? Because this is not the first time we hear, put your hand under the thigh, right? To swear an oath. But it was the fact that this is serious. This is a private, intimate matter. And you're putting your hand under my thigh in a place that it would not normally be, because you need to swear to me. You know how close you got to be on somebody to put your hand under their thigh? Like right up on them, like, hey, I'm so serious. Do not bury me. Like I need you to understand this is serious. And I put on here that it's like, hold on, put on like, so the promise continues. So I put on here the promise continued. He's calling for Joseph to swear an oath to bury him with Abraham and Isaac. This promise is like a statement of Israel's faith. Again, on his deathbed, he's like, I believe the promise that Yah said he's going to bring my family back to Canaan. Because remember, back when they were, when they stopped at Beersheba, Yah said, I will surely bring you back again. And I said that was prophetic because bringing him back again, you might think, well, he didn't bring him back again. He died in Egypt. But like when he's saying, I'm going to bring you back, Yah saying you to Jacob, to Israel as a nation's verbiage. Like, I'm going to bring you, I'm going to bring your people, your descendants here again. And so when we talk about prophetic language, if we're looking at it very linearly or Western, like, oh, well, he said what he said and it didn't happen. No, prophetic language, prophecy is something that has happened and that it will happen again. You know, it's the was, the is, and it's gonna be, you know? And so when he's saying, I'm going to bring you here again, and then him telling Joseph, take my bones to Canaan, because I believe the promise that Yah is gonna put y'all in Canaan again. Y'all in Egypt right now. He told me to get comfortable here, to be fruitful and multiply, but he promised me that y'all, that us, that we're gonna be, that he's gonna bring us out and bring us in Canaan again. So him making Joseph swear this down, he's swearing down to his son, or his son is swearing down to his father that I promise, I swear to you, your bones are not going to be in Egypt, you know? Because he was, again, to reiterate to Joseph himself, I believe the promise. I need you to know that I believe this promise with everything in my being, that I believe the promise that Yah is going to give this land that he said to Abraham, that he said to Isaac, that he's saying to me. And I'm swearing to you, you're swearing to me that you're going to send me here because I am in one accord with the word of the promise that Yah gave to me, to my father, and to your grandfather, or your great-grandfather. Believing it for your children's children. You know, Dominique touched on that. Latanya talked on the things about the kids. Like, Yah might have gave you a promise, and he's saying that I'm promising this to you. I need us to understand when Yah saying, I promise this to you. When he's saying you, I need you to look beyond you and look past your children's children when he says, I'm promising this to you. It is promised to you, to your prosperity, to the seed that he put in you, to put in them, to put in their children and their children's children. And it said he worshiped, and he leaned on his staff, and he worshiped. He worshiped, he served. Where I saw that the word worship and service and being bound to something is the same thing, to labor for something, to worship. Even in his old age, on his deathbed, he's like, I'm gonna stand up and I'm going to worship. I'm still gonna serve Yah in the land. You know, he doesn't know about captivity yet because it hasn't happened, but you know, and he worshiped. And I think that's a good place to pause. Those are all the notes that I had tonight concerning 47 and 46. I just really want us to be aware. To don't like Yah is waking us up out of our drunken stupors, okay? And so a lot of things we may not really pay attention to, but I am here today to redirect your attention to be aware, but don't be consumed with what's going on around you, right? Be aware of what's going on in your state, in your nation, but don't be consumed by it. Like I'll watch something like, okay, cool. I already know it's getting crazy, but it's not gonna alter my atmosphere. Okay. And so I want that to be very clear because things are gonna get crazy. Okay. Do not let your hearts fail you when you see all these things. Your heart should not fail you. You should not be up in dire straits. You should not be out here crying and boohoo and woe is me, what's going on, because y'all already told you to be aware of these things. You need to be aware so you won't make rash decisions and sell yourself into the hand of your oppressors. And I mean spiritually, right? Like physically, yeah, but also spiritually. So you will not sell yourself into the things that you used to do when he brought you out of some things that you used to do that you ain't supposed to be doing. And so we need to fortify our faith, which is why I believe last week was so important for us to talk about the importance and the spiritual strengthening of fasting and prayer because of the way that this world is moving and shifting and transitioning. And to know that our foundation, our Goshen, our tabernacle is with the Most High Yah. And as long as we are bound to his covenant, we are bound in grace, we are bound in covering, we are bound in healing, we are bound in prosperity, we are bound in restoration, we are bound in reconciliation. So yeah, that's the covenant I'm bound to. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm gonna stay. So any comments, commentary, insights?
I just wanted to foot stomp what I said before again, because I know we kind of we hear that when you trust Yah, or when he speaks to you, then we just need to let him handle it. And it's easier said than done. But let me tell you guys, man, it was like something I've never experienced before. Like I knew. And I could not be shaken. I could not be shaken because it gave me such a freedom and such a liberty that I don't think I've ever known. I've never like I trust Yah and I believe his word, but this was something like down in my knower of knowers. It was like, and I was so light, so free. And I'm like, I love that child. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, he loves me. He loves him better than me. He can take care of him better than I can. And and to get that realization, and it was like all the stress, all the worry, all the things over all the months, everything that we have been going through, it was just that pressure, it was just non-existent anymore. It was just so, I was like, okay, all right, y'all, and nothing anyone could say, no conversation that I had, when anyone tried to say anything, I was like, nope. Immediately it was like, I don't want to hear nothing else contrary to what I'm believing. I know what y'all told me. So, I shut it down immediately. I was like, if you're not in agreement with me, we can't talk about it. Because I'm done. And it was so, I'm telling you, when you talk about liberty, freedom, it was so amazing, y'all. And I just cannot reiterate it enough. We talk it on here and everything, but when you experience it, like, no kidding, like, I don't even have words. I can't even explain it anymore, to where I really need you guys to understand that this is real. Abba is real. He will show up like nobody's business for his people. And, we have to understand that he does show up for us like that. He has our back. And so, you guys, whatever it is that you may be going through right now, just trust and know that he doesn't respect any of us more than any of the other ones of us. So if he did it for me, he will move in whatever situation and circumstance that you have going on. Just don't give up, don't cave in, and don't quit. Stand on the word that Abba has given you for whatever your situation or your circumstance is. Stand when nobody else is standing with you, and trust and know that he is Abba. He is the most high. He is El Shaddai. He is more than enough. He is everything that we need. He is Yahuwah Jireh. He is our provider. He will be there. He will show up, and he won't leave us alone. The word says he will never leave us lonely. He is our very present help. And so, y'all, let me tell you, just continue to stay in faith. Continue to stay in faith, because we serve a good Father. And he's been real good to me. And he will be real good to you too.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We just go ahead, Dominique.
All I can say is hallelujah. That's it. Because she said it. She said it all.
Yes. Yes.
I second that. Third it.
Yes. Hallelujah. Well, that's shalom. That's Shabbat Shalom, y'all. That's what we have for tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.